Hello everyone, welcome back to the Python programming course. We are in the part 13 of this series, and in this video I'm going to explain about while loops, and in the previous video I explained about for loops, and in this today's video I'm going to cover up while loops in this Python series. And yeah, let's get started. So in the previous video we actually learned what are for loops, like what can be done with for loops. Like we have seen, we can repeat a piece of code multiple times, and we can see we had also seen how to access elements of the data structures like lists, tuples, dictionaries, sets as well. So while loops are also the second type of loops in Python, which can do everything which a for loop had done in the previous video. Like we have seen something like for I in range of 5, like 1 to 6, to print out the first 5 numbers. Like to print out 1 to 5, we have used this range to print out numbers from 1 to 5. But can it be done by using while loop? Because while is also a loop, and as I said, loops can be used to repeat out a piece of code for multiple times. So while is also a loop, so it should also be used to do it. So yes, while loops can also be used to do that. But how do we actually write a while loop? So we write this while keyword, and then we are going to specify a condition here, and then we are going to write down whatever we are going to do, like the actions which we perform, right? So we are going to write a while keyword, and we are going to mention out a condition here, and if that condition turns out to be true, then it enters this while loop because it has this indentation. So whatever which is having this indentation is part of this while loop. So I hope you got this. Now whatever the piece of code which we write here is going to get executed, and when this piece of code will be completed, then it will again go back and check for this condition, and if this condition still turns out to be true, then it will again enter this for a while loop. It will again execute this, and after the completion of execution it will again return back to this while loop, check for the condition, and if this condition for now turns out to be false, then it will not execute the part of code which is present in the while loop. It will enter the other loop, it will exit the while loop, and it will execute the remaining part of block of code whatever which is there. So I hope you got it how a while loop works. Now let's actually see how to print 1 to 5 numbers using a while loop. So as we know, we have in the for loop condition, we have taken an iterator and we have taken an iterable that range creates, right? So in exactly same way, we should have an iterator and we should have an iterable, and we need to do some work. So how we write that in while loop is, we create an iterator outside the while loop, and we mention out a condition while I is less than or equal to 5. So this is the condition, and I am going to print out the I. Now do you think it's gonna work? It will work, but this turns out to be an infinite loop, and it is very uh, dangerous to create such kind of loops. Why this is called as an infinite loop? When I run this, actually it's printing 1 for millions and millions and millions of times, like infinite times. It's going to run it, and it's going to crash your computer some kind of time. Like what is actually this infinite loop is? As you can see, as part of the syntax which I have written here, I have given the value 1 to this I. Now I have taken this while loop using this while keyword, and then I have specified a condition while I is less than or equal to 5. This is my condition. Now what is the value of I here? I value turns out to be 1, and this condition turns out to be true. And when this condition turns out to be true, it will enter this while loop and it will print out the I value, which is 1. So you get the value get printed on the output section, that is 1. And then it will again go back to the condition and it will again see the condition, that is I less than or equals to 5. And again the I value is 1. Again the condition turns out to be true. Again it prints it, and this happens for infinite times because the I value is always 1. So there has to be something which will keep this I moving forward. Like it I becomes 2, I becomes 3, I becomes 4, I becomes 5, and I becomes 6, and this condition then becomes false and it will exit the for loop. So this has to be the working of while loop. In the case of for loop, what we are doing, for I in range of 1 to 6, and when we actually print this I, what happening? This I, what is happening? This I is actually changing its value from 1 to 5. The Python itself is changing the value from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. So the Python itself is changing the value, right? But in case of while loop, Python will not actually change the value of I. You yourself has to change the value of I. You yourself has to increment or decrement the value of I. Like how I have written I is equals to 1. Now I'll write while I less than or equals to 5. This is my condition. Then I'll specify a colon and I have to mention the work I have to do. I will print the value of I, but I also need to increment the value of I, that is I is equals to I plus 1. Now let's see the program what it will be. See, it prints out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ignoring a, like without causing a infinite loop. Why? Because we have incremented the I, and at some point of time this condition will turn out to false and it will exit this while loop, and as we have no other instructions left, anything will not get executed and it will stop the program, like it will end the program. So now here you can see what happens. Let's see the working of it. So first, initially I is set to 1, so I has 1, so it will check this condition, and as 1 less than or equal to 5, this condition will turn out true and it will enter this while loop and it prints out the value, and 1 gets printed out here and it will increment it. Now 1 becomes 2. Now I has 1 plus 1, that is 2. I value stores 2, so it will again go back to checking the condition. 2 less than or equal to 5 will turn out to true. It will print 2 and it will become 3. 3 less than 5 is again true. It will print 3. It will become 4 now. And 4 less than or equal to 5, it will again return true. Prints 4 and increments to 5. 5 less than or equal to 5 is also true. It will print out 5 and it will get incremented to 6. And now 6 less than or equal to 5 is actually false. So what happens? This will not actually execute whatever the piece of code which is present in the while loop, and as there are no instructions after while loop, the code execution stops. Right? Now let's see, if I write while false and print this, do you think anything gets printed? No, because if it's actually false, then it will not even enter the while loop and it will not execute anything. So I hope you got it, how to use a while loop and how to print out 5 numbers. Suppose if I want to print out 100 numbers, I'll do while I less than or equal to 100, and if I'll print this I value, it will give out 1 to 100 numbers. And again, I did not use this increment operator, so it's actually giving out a infinite loop. So we have to be careful while writing a while loop. We need to make sure that sometime or the other the condition gets false and gets out of the loop. But if at all it's not getting out of the loop, it will turn out to get into an infinite loop. So you need to make sure that it will not be an infinite loop while writing or creating a while loop. So here you can see, now it prints out the 100 numbers. So in this way we can use while loops. Now in the previous video I also explained like for loop can be used like this for color in colors, like accessing elements of a list, like for number in 1 2 3 4 5, like this, and we can access we can print the number, right? But normally when I explain lists, how do you actually access individual elements of a list? Suppose if I have a list called numbers, and in this I have 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Now each has its own index position, right? Now this has 0 index position, this has 1, this has 2, 3, and 4. So in order to access the elements, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say numbers of 0 will return out the first element, and so on, like numbers of 1 will return out the second, numbers of 2 will return out the third. Like this, with indexing position, we are going to access the elements of the list. So, but if at all I want to access the 5 elements, like let's say I want to print out the 5 elements, suppose you don't know loops, what you're going to do, you only know for loop, for loop, but with for loop you can going to do that, but we are not going to access it by index. But if at all you want to access it by index, what you're going to do, you're going to say numbers of 0, you're going to print numbers of 1, like this you're going to print out up to numbers of 4, right? But we know while loop, and with the while loop we can have a counter variable, and using this counter variable we can actually specify a condition like I less than 5, and this I value will keep on increasing from I is equals to 1 to, it will start, let's make it from 0, and it will start from I equals to 0, I equals to 1, I equals to 3, I equals to 4, like, and when it's I5 it will end. So we can make this I variable numbers of I here, and no need to print from 0 to 5, like that, no need to write. This I value will keep on changing from 0 to 4. So when I value at the first axis is 0, it will print out numbers of 0. When I value is at 1, it will print out numbers of 1. When I value becomes 2, it will print out numbers of 2. When 3, numbers of 3. When 4, numbers of 4. So we can use while loop in order to access the values present in the list. Suppose if I say while I less than 5, and if I try to print numbers of I, and I keep in mind you have to increment this. You can increment or decrement with the condition, because if I value is actually 10 and you want to print out the numbers in the reverse order from 10 to 0, you can specify the condition I greater than 0, and you can make this I minus equal to 1. Okay. So here you can see we have accessed each and every element present inside the list. But if I at all I say there is a list which we don't know the like number of elements present in the list, we don't know that, then how we are going to do, we should not always use this 5, because why we are using 5, because there are 5 elements in the list, right? But we don't know whether a list has a specific number of elements. At that point of time we know that we have a function called length, and length function will actually give out how many numbers are present in that array. So we can actually use this, while I less than length of numbers, that will return out 5. So in this case it will return out 5, and I less than 5 will be the condition. If at all we have 100 elements in the list, it will return out 100, and I value will move up to 99, and it will have access to every element present in the list. So I hope you got it, how to use loops to iterate, that is while loop to iterate through this entire list. We can also do it with tuples. We cannot do it with sets because they're unordered, and as I said, we can do it with the list as well. But now, as we know, we have lists, and we have for loop, and we have while loop. Then why two loops in order to do same things? See, there are many kind of different situations we are going to deal with. In some situations, for loop will be a better use, and in some situations, while loop will be a better use for us. So, then where to use what? Suppose if we are dealing with a situation where we already know how many times to repeat a piece of code then we are going to use a for loop. Suppose in the previous example, if at all in the first when I started to explain loops, I said that I want to print hello for 100 times. Now I actually know how many times I have to do my work. Like I have to print it for 100 times. I know how many times the code has to be repeated. So in that situations, I'm going to use a for loop. If at all I know how many times specifically I need to repeat this piece of code, then I'm going to use this kind of for loops for I in range of 100, because I specifically know how many times I'm going to repeat this piece of code which is present in this for loop. And in case of accessing elements, and also in case of accessing elements of data structures, we can use a for loop. But I have also shown you how to access it with a while loop. But if you compare it with the for loop, it is actually easier to access elements in the case of a for loop, because there is no need to take a counter variable and do increment. There, of course, we take a variable in both the loops, but we know there is no need of incrementing the value by ourselves, because for loop does it itself. There is no need of incrementing it again. So for loop does it itself, and we can go through the values of dictionaries and keys in for loop easily. So in case of accessing the elements, we can actually use a for loop. But when to use a while loop then? So these are the situations when we are actually going to use a for loop, because it will be easier for us to deal with. Then when we are going to use a while loop, actually, so when we are going to use a while loop is when we don't know how many times a specific task has to be repeated. Like if at all we don't know how many times a task has to be repeated beforehand, then we are going to use a for loop. Because why? In while loops, we are going to deal with conditions. Like suppose if you are playing a game, and in that game you don't know when you will lose or when you will win, right? So if you are playing a game, you will don't know when you will win or when you will lose. In that time, you actually don't know how much time the program should run, because when a program should end, when a game ends, actually when you win or when you lose, the game will actually end, right? So you know the condition that someone wins or someone loses, the game is gonna end. So you know the specific condition of it, but you don't know the specific times how much the game has to run. You don't know beforehand that. So in that cases, you are going to use a while loop. Suppose if I have a tic-tac-toe game, I have some patterns. If the pattern matches, then I am going to declare a winner. So I'm going to use a while loop out there. I don't know specifically how many turns, in how many turns the game or the player wins. I don't know that beforehand, that in 3 tries itself the player wins. I can't definitely say that, right? In 3 turns itself the game is gonna end. I can't say that. Like I'm not 100% sure about that. So I need to make down a condition for that. If this condition gets false, or if this up to this condition, print do all these actions, and when this condition becomes false, just close that. So in that cases, I am going to use a while loop. So now I hope you are comfortable when to use a for loop and when to use a while loop. Now you're comfortable with that. So I hope I have clarified everything about for loops and while loops. I know I think I have covered everything. So I hope you're comfortable with while loops and for loops and how to use them and when to use what. I also explained it. So now what I will say is go to the ChatGPT. You have covered what are for loops, what are while loops. We have covered conditional statements, and you have covered dictionaries, lists, sets, tuples, all the data structures. You have covered the basic variables and everything. Give out all the topics you have learned and what all the topics I have covered in this Python series. You go out into the ChatGPT, you put out all the topics you have learned, ask it to give you a project, because now you are ready to do something good. Because with all these topics you can do some good project, like a basic project. Like go to the ChatGPT, ask it to give something good for you. You try to do it, and you can definitely do it. And yeah, so before ending, I actually want to cover something else as well. So I have missed this part. Yeah, the nested loops. When we are going to use nested loops is, suppose if I have something like numbers, and this is a two-dimensional array, like two-dimensional list. Like have a list in a list. Like I have this. Now if I try to do for I in numbers, and if I try to print this I, let's see what happens. You can see I'm actually accessing the lists itself, right? I'm actually accessing whatever the lists, the data containers are there, I'm accessing them, but I'm not actually accessing the individual elements. So if at all I want to access the individual elements, then I have to iterate through this again. Like now I has an iterable, it doesn't have a value, it has an iterable itself. It has a list, list is an iterable. So now for I in numbers, first I value will be assigned to this iterable, and in this iterable again I have to use a for loop and iterate through them. So again I'm going to use for j in I, and I am going to print out this j, and let's see. Here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So in this way we are going to deal with matrices. So we are going to use out nested loops, because for I in numbers will actually give out the iterables, that is the lists, this complete lists. But if at all you want to actually iterate through the specific digits, then you are going to use one more for loop, and this for loop we are going to use an iterator in the iterable itself, because for I in numbers will actually take out this iterable, and now for I in numbers will get executed, and I will have this value, and when we enter this value, this line, now j is going to deal with this iterable, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and j is going to access each and every element of this iterable, and it's going to print out. So we are going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now j completes its loop. Now what happens, again the control will return to this, and I will take out the second iterable, that is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and it will enter the loop. Now j will again enter into this new iterable, that is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and it will access each and every element in this list, and it will print them out, and it will end this, and it will get back again, as there is no iterables, it will end this for loop and get back to the remaining code. So I hope you got it, how actually nested loops work. So nested loops works basically like this. The outer loop executes first, and the inner loop has to be completed first, then only it will get back to the outer loop and again get back into the inner loop. So first this gets executed, and after the completion of this itself, then only it will get back to the outer loop, and again after the completion of this inner loop, it will get back to the outer loop. So I hope you have understood what are nested loops. If at all you are not clarified it, I would recommend you to watch back again, rewatch it, and if at all you are still not clarified with this, I hope you Google it out or go with ChatGPT, because as a programmer, as I said, we need to have that ability to search for things, do it ourselves, understand it ourselves. So we need to have that capability. So I hope you can do that. And yes, that's all for this. And as I said, do some meaningful projects, not just basic coding or textbook problems. That's not coding. So coding is a lot more interesting. So go to ChatGPT, get out some interesting topics, interesting projects to deal with, work on them. If you are not getting it, if you are not unable to do it, if you are unable to do that project, go back to ChatGPT again, ask it how to do it, get out, see it, and go back with do it without seeing. You will definitely improve your coding skills only by doing the projects. You work on them, don't just memorize syntax. Memorizing syntax is not the case. Even if you have failed to learn a syntax, you can go and you can google it and you can get it, but you need to have that logical thinking to do the problems. So I hope you will do that. Go to ChatGPT, get out some problems, get out some projects, work on them, do it. And in the next video I'm going to cover out functions, and with that you can do some better projects with that as well. So I hope uh, you have loved this video, and this is all for today. And if at all there are any kind of improvements I need to make in myself, please comment in the comment box, and I will definitely try to improve myself in every video, and I will provide the best content possible for you to learn Python. So yeah, that's all for today. See you in the next one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.